This time, though, something was different. "Sir, stop right there." "What now?" "Sir, I'm tired, and I just want to go home." "Your dog? She's off-leash." "What are you talking about? She's never off-leash. I'm holding her harness right now." "Not anymore, you're not." And before I could process what he was saying, I felt my hand empty, the harness slipping away. Daisy was gone. Panic set in. I called her name, but there was no response. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat trickle down my neck. Daisy never strayed from me. She wouldn't just run off.
"She must have slipped away. I told you to keep her under control."
I knew he had something to do with it, or had cut the leash. I could feel the malicious satisfaction oozing from his words. I swore I heard the shuffling of hurried feet and a dog whimpering before a trunk was slammed shut, but I didn't know for sure. Blind and alone, I stood there in the middle of the street, helpless. "Hi, my name is Eric, and I am a Black American, and I've never been the type to seek out trouble. It just seems to find me. You'd think being blind would give me a little peace, right? But no, in my case, it's almost the opposite. You see, I have a dog, a damn good one too. She's my eyes, my partner, my lifeline. Her name is Daisy, and she's been with me for 5 years now. Trust me, I'd be a wreck without her. But apparently, not everyone sees Daisy as the wonder that she is. I can recall this one time I encountered a man that was hell-bent to go out of his way to make my life harder. The man in question was a police officer, no less, and his name was Trent. I don't know what it was about him, but this guy had it out for me, and more specifically, for Daisy. He didn't outright say it, but I could feel the contempt rolling off him whenever we crossed paths, which was far too often for my liking. It started a few months ago, just little things at first. Officer Trent would stop me on the street for no reason, questioning me as if I looked suspicious or out of place. But how out of place can a blind man walking with a service dog really be? I'd be tapping along with my cane, Daisy guiding me like she always does, when I'd hear a sharp voice call out,
"Hold up, sir. I need to speak with you."
"Who? Me? Is everything okay?" The first few times, he'd ask the usual. Where I was headed, if I lived nearby, the same stupid questions over and over again. I'd give him my address, tell him I was just walking to the store or heading home from work, and he'd act like I was lying, like I didn't belong here. But it wasn't until he started focusing on Daisy that things really took a turn.
"You need to keep that dog under control. I've been hearing from people that it's been off-leash and that it's snapped at a few people. That dog better not cause any trouble, or I'll have animal control take her away."
"Sir, she is never without her harness. I need her to guide me. I have no idea who is saying that she snapped at them, but I can honestly say that that has never happened."
"Are you calling me a liar?"
"Well, no sir. But Daisy is highly trained and not at all aggressive. She couldn't be a seeing eye dog if she was."
"You just keep that beast on a short leash. If I hear that she has bitten someone, I'll put her down myself. Got it?"
I was at a loss for words. After all, it was true. Daisy was highly trained to be patient to a very high level and wasn't remotely aggressive. She had never snapped at a single person or another animal her entire life. I didn't know what this police officer was talking about, but I also didn't want any trouble, and so I placated him and went on my way. But I kept encountering Officer Trent. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was a racist or was just one of those people who didn't like dogs. Not everyone's an animal person, I get that. But soon, it became obvious that it was personal. I heard from some neighbors that Trent had a bad history with dogs. Apparently, one had bitten him when he was a kid, and ever since then, he's hated them. But it wasn't just that. It was like he wanted to prove something, like pestering a blind man with a service dog gave him some twisted sense of power. It got worse. One day, Daisy and I were walking to the park when Trent pulled up next to me in his squad car. I could hear the tires squealing as he slowed down, the crackle of the car door opening.
"Hey, you can't bring that dog into the park. There's a no pets policy. And by the way, what if it poops? You won't even see it because you blind."
She's a service animal. She's allowed in any public space. Besides, how am I supposed to walk through the park without her?
"I don't care what she is. Rules are rules. You bring that dog in there, and I'll write you up for a violation."
I knew he was lying. I've done my research, and I know the laws. Daisy has every right to be with me wherever I go, but Trent didn't care about that. He just wanted to mess with me, to make my life that much harder. From that day on, it seemed like Trent was everywhere. Whenever I stepped outside with Daisy, I'd hear his voice, feel his presence lurking. He'd find any excuse to stop me. He'd accuse Daisy of being unclean, of not having the proper identification, anything to justify his harassment. One evening, I was walking back home, tired after a long day at work, when I heard that all too familiar voice again. This time, though, something was different.
Sir, stop right there.
What now? Sir, I'm tired, and I just want to go home.
Your dog? She's off leash.
What are you talking about? She's never off leash. I'm holding her harness right now.
Not anymore, you're not.
And before I could process what he was saying, I felt my hand empty, the harness slipping away. Daisy was gone. Panic set in. I called her name, but there was no response. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat trickle down my neck. Daisy never strayed from me. She wouldn't just run off.
She must have slipped away. I told you to keep her under control.
I knew he had something to do with it, or had cut the leash. I could feel the malicious satisfaction oozing from his words. I swore I heard the shuffling of hurried feet and a dog whimpering before a trunk was slammed shut, but I didn't know for sure. Blind and alone, I stood there in the middle of the street, helpless. My mind raced as I tried to think of what to do. Daisy would come back. She always came back. I just had to stay calm. But hours passed, and she didn't return. I managed to find my way home, thankfully, and waited by the door, hoping beyond hope that she'd find her way back. I felt sick. Without Daisy, I was lost in more ways than one. That night, I barely slept. My mind was filled with the worst possibilities. What if she was hurt? What if someone found her and kept her? I couldn't stand the thought of her out there, alone and scared. By morning, I was resolved. I had to find her. I spent the next day canvassing the area, calling out to her, asking anyone I passed if they'd seen her. No one had. But I didn't give up. I couldn't. Daisy was all I had. And then, by some miracle, I found her. Or rather, she found me. It was late, and I was sitting on a park bench, exhausted and defeated, when I felt a familiar nudge against my leg. I reached down, my fingers brushing through her fur, and relief washed over me like a tidal wave. Daisy! Oh girl, I'm so glad to have you back.
Hey Eric. Yeah, I found her at the animal shelter. Some anonymous person surrendered her yesterday, apparently.
Oh, hey Sam, thank you so much. Did they know anything about the person that brought her in?
Sadly, no. You got lucky, Eric. I was only down there because I was looking to adopt a dog myself. If I wasn't, who knows where Daisy would have ended up.
I was so grateful to Sam for helping me, and even more grateful that Daisy was back in my life. But something was wrong. I could feel it in the way she leaned against me, the way she trembled. She wasn't herself. She'd been through something, and I knew exactly who was responsible. That night, as I sat in the dark of my apartment, holding Daisy close, I made a decision. Officer Trent had gone too far. It was time for me to do something about it. I'm not a violent person. I've never been one to seek revenge. But Trent had made my life hell. He'd taken away my independence, my sense of security, and, most importantly, he'd hurt Daisy. And that was unforgivable. I spent the next few days quietly gathering information. I have my connections, people who knew people. I learned Trent's routine, where he parked his squad car when he went on patrol, where he liked to hang out off duty. I wasn't planning anything drastic, just a little payback. One evening, I made my move. It was late, and Trent was on his usual patrol route. I had everything planned out. I knew the alleyway he cut through to take a shortcut back to the station, and I knew it was poorly lit. I waited in the shadows, listening for the sound of his footsteps. When I heard him approaching, I called out, "Officer Trent!"
Who's there?
It's me. You remember me, don't you?
What do you want? I heard you got that stupid dog back. That's a shame. Well, hopefully it doesn't run away again. It will be a real shame if it did, though.
Oh, I don't think that will ever happen again. But I just wanted to thank you for everything.
What are you talking about, you foolish cripple? You're out here alone. No dog to keep you company? Of course not. I made sure to bring along a friend. Well, hopefully you and him can become good friends. Say hi to your new friend. I had spoken to Sam the previous day and had told him about everything that Trent had done to me, and he had agreed to help me. With a lot of difficult effort, we trapped a violent feral dog in a dog carrier, and I had hidden it off to the side of the alley and had rigged up a rope to the carrier's door. I gave the rope a tug and then quickly hurried away. Behind me, I heard the barking of the dog that had been in the carrier, followed by Trent screaming as it bit him, and then chased him through the alley. From what I heard, that stray dog chased him for almost 2 hours before animal control came and helped him. But funny enough, the dog fled and got away from them. In that time before animal control showed up, he had been bitten many times and had even peed himself from fear. I did feel bad for the stray, but I was happy that it got away. After that, Trent left Daisy and I alone. He wouldn't so much as speak to us about anything. People even told me that when he saw us, that he would turn around and head the other way, and always looked panicked when he heard a dog bark. He probably could have told his fellow officers about what I had done, but I don't think people would have believed him, and so I got away with it. But honestly, can you blame me?
They would often stop by whenever Scott wasn't home and call me every degrading and insulting name they knew of.
Barren Black Witch? What? Did you lose your womb while sleeping around? Or did you trade it for money with your black witchcraft?
Ma'am, you're being unfair to me. Scott has told you we're both fine medically. I didn't trade my womb for nothing. How can you even say that?
You're not fine if you're still unable to have a child since 2 years you've been married to my son. You have nothing to say, young lady.
After they left, I would remain in my room and nearly cry my eyes out. I felt so unhappy. Hello, everyone. My name's Anna. I'm originally from Uganda, but I relocated to Italy around the time I was about 12 years old. I'm 32 now, and I'm married to Scott, an Italian man I met way back in college. Scott and I were in the same class, and he immediately stood out to me. He had this easygoing charm and a distinctive Italian accent that made him quite different from anyone else around. I remember the first time he spoke to me. He was asking for help with a project we were both working on. His genuine curiosity and the way he listened made me feel instantly at ease. As weeks went by, we began to see each other more often. We'd sit together in class, study together, and even grab coffee between lectures. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. Scott had a knack for making me laugh and feel comfortable, which was something I hadn't experienced before. One evening, as we walked through the campus park, Scott confessed that he'd developed feelings for me. I felt the same way, so we decided to give dating a try. Our relationship grew naturally from there, filled with shared interests, laughter, and deep conversations. It felt like we had known each other for much longer than we actually had. When it came time for Scott to meet my family, I was a bundle of nerves. My family is very traditional, and I hoped they'd be open to him. Scott, however, was wonderful. He made a real effort to understand our culture and traditions. He asked questions, listened intently, and even learned a few words of my native language. The moment Scott stepped into our home, he was greeted with warmth. My parents were impressed by his respect and eagerness to fit in. They saw how happy he made me, and how he genuinely cared for our family. It didn't take long for them to see what I saw in him and to welcome him with open arms. Scott's effort to embrace my background and his genuine nature won over everyone. It was clear that he wasn't just interested in me, but in becoming a part of my world. That made all the difference and solidified our bond. The first time I met Scott's parents, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I hoped they'd see me the way Scott did, but it didn't take long for things to go wrong. As soon as I walked through the door, Scott's mother's eyes widened in shock. She looked me up and down, her face contorting with disbelief.
What? A black woman? Scott, are you crazy? How could you think of marrying a black lady?
Her voice was sharp and filled with disdain. Scott's father wasn't any better. He stood there, arms crossed, shaking his head.
Honestly, I'm very disappointed in you. A black lady?
I felt my cheeks flush with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Scott, however, was quick to defend me.
You're both being unfair to her.
What does being black mean? She's human just like us.
His voice was firm, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. I wanted to speak up, to defend myself, but the weight of the situation left me feeling speechless. Before I could say a word, Scott's mother turned to me with a scowl.
Just leave, Blackie. We don't want you here. We do not approve of you, and we never will.
I felt my heart sink as tears welled up in my eyes. I knew I had to leave, but it was hard to hold back the sobs as I walked out of their home. The drive back was a blur of emotions, sadness, humiliation, and a sense of deep disappointment. The next day, Scott came to me with an apologetic expression.
Anna, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I know how hurtful it was. I've talked to them, and they're ready to apologize. Please, can we try again? They need to understand how wrong they were.
I hesitated, but Scott's sincerity convinced me to give it another chance. A week later, I found myself standing at Scott's parents' door once more, hoping for a better outcome. When I walked in, I was met with a more subdued atmosphere, but the tension was palpable. However, the moment Scott's parents learned about my background, their demeanor changed drastically.
So you come from a poor background?
I suppose you've had to make do with less, haven't you? Did you also sleep with Italian men for money to live here?
His tone was condescending, filled with judgment. The comments stung deeply. Scott tried to intervene, but the damage was already done. Their prejudices were clear, and no amount of apology seemed to change their attitudes. I could feel my composure breaking. I looked at Scott, seeing the pain in his eyes, but the harsh words from his parents had already cut through me. I knew that no matter how much Scott loved me, their views were something I couldn't easily change. Leaving their home for the second time, I felt a heavy weight on my shoulders, realizing that their acceptance was something I might never fully have. Well, Scott and I both came to an agreement to push through with our relationship without his parents' approval. My family felt sad about the refusal to accept me, but didn't let that change how they felt for Scott. With that, we began to prepare for our wedding. Scott's brother wasn't like his parents. He assisted us in every way he could and even asked to be Scott's best man. On the day of the wedding, shockingly, Scott's parents came. They sat at the back of the hall and refused to smile, but I was still happy that they showed up. It meant they cared about their son. They vehemently refused to take any pictures with us, no matter how Scott or his brother tried to beg them. We let them be and simply enjoyed our wedding. After the wedding came another problem. 2 years after our wedding, and we were still struggling to have a child. We'd gone to different hospitals to see countless doctors, but all test results showed that we didn't have any issues medically. I wouldn't have been so worried if Scott's parents didn't constantly ring it in my ears that I was a barren witch. Yes. 1 year after our wedding, they'd both apologized to us, but that didn't mean they liked me. They simply apologized so they could mend their relationship with Scott. They would often stop by whenever Scott wasn't home and call me every degrading and insulting name they knew of.
Barren black witch? What? Did you lose your womb while sleeping around? Or did you trade it for money with your black witchcraft?
Ma'am, you're being unfair to me. Scott has told you we're both fine medically. I didn't trade my womb for nothing. How can you even say that?
You're not fine if you're still unable to have a child since 2 years you've been married to my son. You have nothing to say, young lady.
After they left, I would remain in my room and nearly cry my eyes out. I felt so unhappy. But I couldn't tell Scott. I couldn't afford to make him fight with his parents again. Finally, after 5 long years of waiting, I got pregnant. My husband was overjoyed when he got the news. My family too, as well as Scott's brother. Everyone was happy for me except Scott's parents. They accused me of lying about my pregnancy. Even after Scott confirmed that we'd gone together, they refused to believe.
Who knows if she paid the doctor to lie? No one knows what these black, desperate women are capable of.
Scott nearly flared up in anger, but I managed to hold him back. I told my in-laws I was ready to have the test again in whatever hospital they chose. Embarrassingly for them, the result came out to prove that I was truly pregnant. They were so ashamed they hid from us for 3 whole months. On the day they finally visited us to apologize, Scott had to travel to a different country for work. They both volunteered to stay with me, since I was already 4 months pregnant. Scott was skeptical about it at first, but I assured him that I'd be fine. My in-laws brought some of their things and began living with me. Believe me when I say it was the toughest point of my life. They were both pure evil and would make me do things the doctor warned me against doing. My mother-in-law would make me cook countless times a day and end up throwing it in the bin.
Who knows? You might have poisoned that food with your poisonous eyes.
It was so painful to watch the meal I spent hours preparing being thrown into the bin, but I couldn't do anything about it. In the morning, she would wake me up with a bucket of icy water. She would yell at me for being a lazy wife and not waking up early when it was only just 4 a.m. I did her laundry with my bare hands because she prohibited me from using the machine. I never complained.
I heard black women wash with their hands. Scott has pampered you too much. How can he make you use the machine when you have your ugly hands?
Even the times when she made me wash every single clothing item she brought with her on an empty stomach, I didn't complain. I began to grow lean, and even Scott noticed it one night while we were having a video call. I lied to him about being stressed from the pregnancy, and he apologized. I felt bad to hear him apologize for something he didn't do. My father-in-law wasn't any better. One day, after I accidentally added a little sugar to his tea, he asked me to hammer 50 nails slowly into a log of wood. By the time I was done, I was panting hard. As if that wasn't enough. One day, he spilled some of his steaming hot tea on my feet, claiming he didn't see me walking toward him. I was living a nightmare with those two. I wanted to get out of it as fast as possible, but I also knew I had to wait until Scott returned. Unfortunately, the day he returned, he met me in a bad state. I'd collapsed in the middle of helping my father-in-law with a very tedious task that even he couldn't do. Scott was so shocked when he came in and met his dad sitting cross-legged while I laid on the floor. Before saying anything to his dad, he picked me up and took us to our bedroom. After I woke up, I burst into tears and told him everything I'd been keeping away from him. Scott was so pissed that he stormed out of the room and went to the living room. There, he met both his parents. Before they could speak, he pounced on them. They received the beating of their lives from him before Scott dragged them to one of our empty rooms. There was no bed there or anything. He told them they'd be there until I gave birth, and only feed on whatever he gave them. I felt bad every time I opened the door to give them their meal. Their cries also touched me deeply. Scott has threatened to show videos of them mistreating me if they ever tried to contact the police. Apparently, he had installed cameras without our knowledge, and they recorded everything that happened when he wasn't home. This seemed to scare his parents even more. They were both there for 6 months. My father-in-law's beards were overgrown, and his wife looked so tattered. Scott forced them to take care of me and our daughter after I gave birth. They did all the house chores, cooked, etc. I was impressed with their new behavior. After a while, they apologized for all their past actions and promised to do better. I forgave them and they burst into cries. I couldn't help but hug them. Ever since, they've both been nothing but good people. I guess Scott beating and locking them up was just the perfect punishment they deserved. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
However, his next prank would be the final straw for me. I always have a morning coffee at the same time each day, and when I went to the break room to grab my coffee, I slipped across the office kitchen floor and crashed into the tables there. Someone had poured oil all over the floor, and I hadn't noticed and really injured myself. My manager was forced to call an ambulance for me, and as they were loading me onto a stretcher, I caught a glimpse of George snickering at the sight of me in pain and being taken away. I knew that this had all been another one of his stupid pranks, and he had gone way too far this time. Hi there, my name is Mike, and I have quite the story for you. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm the hero of the story, but that's for you to decide. Here, let me explain what happened, and you can let me know what you think. Let me start off by saying that I've worked in the same office for most of my adult life. The people I work with are some of the best people in the world. I would consider some of them to be essentially family members even. Everything was perfect. That is, until George joined the company. There were lots of rumors as to why he had left the previous company he had worked for, but no one really knew for sure what happened. After I had met him, though, I think I have a pretty good idea about what had happened. Let's just say, I had a sneaking suspicion that he had been fired, and for good reason. The first day that he started work, I knew that we wouldn't get along.
Hey Mike, I want to introduce you to George. He just joined the team.
Oh, hey there. Nice to meet you, George.
Hi there. So how do you guys feel about the occasional practical joke?
What do you mean?
Well, for example, I could comment on how hideous your clothes are. I mean, where did you even get that shirt? Did you buy it from a homeless man on the street?
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sure that George was just joking. So long as it doesn't get out of hand, such things shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. I guess.
Oh, come on now, Mike. Surely someone as big as you has thick skin.
His last comment was especially unprofessional, and it left me feeling incredibly awkward. And as someone on the heavier side, it really rubbed me the wrong way. Sadly, every time I had to speak with George, it never got any better, and that was only the beginning of the odd behaviors that George exhibited. During the first week that he worked for us, I found that my lunch was stolen from the company fridge once, and on a different occasion, someone had opened my lunch bag and filled it with shaving cream. Of course, no one confessed to having done the prank, but it was abundantly obvious who it was that had done it. Honestly, it felt like such a dumb prank. Like something a child would do, and since no one else confessed to having done it, I knew that it had been George, but I couldn't prove it, so I just let it go. The second week that George worked for the company, his pranks continued. The tragedy, though, was that I still couldn't not prove that he was the one behind them. It was clear, though, that he was the one to cover my car in toilet paper, as well as leave thumbtacks on my chair. Sitting down on the tacks was extremely painful and embarrassing as well. Sadly, I wasn't the only one to be targeted by his childish behavior, and soon me and the other members of our team were talking about how annoying George was.
I've had it with that jerk. He put hot sauce in everything in my lunch. It was so spicy that it made me sick and have to take the rest of the day off.
That's nothing. He rigged my computer chair so that when I sat down, that it would collapse under me and I fell hard to the ground and bruised my tailbone. I had to sleep on my stomach for 2 weeks because of it.
Something really needs to be done. I tried talking to our manager, but unless we can prove that it was him doing these pranks, he said that there isn't anything that he can do. It's so frustrating. I knew that people were beginning to lose patience with him, myself included. However, his next prank would be the final straw for me. I always have a morning coffee at the same time each day, and when I went to the break room to grab my coffee, I slipped across the office kitchen floor and crashed into the tables there. Someone had poured oil all over the floor, and I hadn't noticed and really injured myself. My manager was forced to call an ambulance for me, and as they were loading me onto a stretcher, I caught a glimpse of George snickering at the sight of me in pain and being taken away. I knew that this had all been another one of his stupid pranks, and he had gone way too far this time. It turned out that I had broken my right arm in 3 places and would need to have it in a cast for months until it fully healed. On top of that, I needed to take a few days off of work, and even when I went back, I needed to take painkillers in order to be able to not be in agony while I worked. I was in terrible pain and incredibly uncomfortable, and I was very angry with George for causing my injuries. A few days after I returned to work, I went to sit down on my desk chair and it crumbled and fell apart when I sat down. Someone had unscrewed all the bolts and nuts that held it together. The impact of hitting the floor made me nearly pass out from the pain that shot through my body. In a rage, I got up and stormed out of my office to go and find George. After a few minutes, I found him in a stairwell, scrolling through his phone and chuckling. On his screen were images of me on the stretcher after I had broke my arm. I saw red and felt like I was about to lose control. George, I know that it was you that poured the oil on the kitchen floor and that it was you that broke my chair so that it would collapse when I sat down. Isn't it enough that you caused me to break my arm? Are you trying to kill me?
You can't prove anything, Mike. Maybe it was me, and maybe it wasn't. Either way, they were just harmless pranks. Maybe don't be so sensitive.
Sensitive? I missed work because of your immature pranks. And I'll be in this cast for months as well. I can't believe that after hurting me this badly, that you would behave like a complete jackass and not even apologize that things went too far.
Oh, don't overreact. You sound like such a whiny little punk. Maybe you should just grow up and learn how to take a joke.
The pain that was coursing through my body was excruciating, but I barely felt it at that moment. The only thing on my mind was to hurt George somehow and get revenge for what he had put me through. Before I knew it, I threw my uninjured arm out and shoved him as hard as I could and he fell down the stairs. He had not been expecting it, and he tumbled down 3 flights of stairs before stopping. From where I was, I could see that he was unconscious. Panicking, I called for an ambulance, and when asked, I said that I had just found him like that and assumed he must have slipped and fell on his own. Thankfully, everyone believed my story, and it didn't hurt that when they brought George to the hospital that he had slipped into a coma. For 3 weeks he was unconscious, and then one day he finally woke up again. But there was clearly brain damage. Apparently, his ability to remember was severely affected, and he had no recollection about what happened the day he went to the hospital. When he was finally well enough to return to work, he was a changed man. His personality was completely different, and all the pranks stopped entirely. He was now a very quiet person, and he would often just stare off into the distance, and he would struggle trying to remember what tasks he would have to do each day. He began leaving notes all over his office to remind him what he needed to do in a given day. It got so bad that the company was forced to let him go because he just couldn't remember what tasks needed to get done, and his productivity suffered. He was an adequate employee prior to the injury, but afterwards, he was completely inept and unable to focus. Everyone around the office was sympathetic and outwardly spoke highly of him, but I had more than a few private conversations from people that were grateful that he had his accident. I felt so guilty, causing him to essentially have permanent brain damage and for him to lose his job as a result. I'm sure he would have been fired eventually anyways, but I hadn't imagined that it would be because of a brain injury I had caused. Thankfully, no one in the office knows about my part in what happened, but the guilt from it bothers me quite a bit. So what do you think? Am I the bad guy? I mean, I didn't mean for him to get hurt as badly as he did. I didn't say anything more about it. As she got back to her conversation with her family, I quietly texted all of my family members present not to drink from the punch bowl. Very shortly after we had finished eating, people began to make toasts to us. It was then that whatever George put into the punch bowl kicked in. Almost at the exact same time, entire tables of people were vomiting all over the place. The room quickly became full of the smell of hot vomit. Because I had sent out that text message of warning to my family, it was only Alyssa's that was vomiting. Your wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of your life, right? Well, for me, it was the day that my life was ruined. I was so excited to spend the rest of my life with the love of my life, Alyssa. She was my high school sweetheart, and we kept dating all throughout college. I loved her so much, and couldn't imagine living my life without her. After I graduated college, I realized that I wanted her in my life forever. Before I could propose to her, I had to make sure that I could provide for the two of us. I worked hard and got a promotion at my job. I was the youngest manager there. Everyone there was impressed with my work and wanted me to lead their teams. One of my bosses liked me so much that he even wanted me to take his position after he retired. I was set. With my finances secure, I knew that I could marry Alyssa in good conscience. We could afford a house and a family now. There was only one issue. We had gone through a lot over the years and had our fair share of fights, but we would always pull through them, stronger than ever. The only thing that continued to concern me was her father. Alyssa was a total daddy's girl, and I was never good enough in his eyes. I was a Navy SEAL for 30 years before I retired. I know how to protect and provide for my daughter. I know that as soon as there's any danger, you wouldn't be able to protect her. You're such a shrimp. I doubt you can even take a punch or protect my daughter from thieves. You look so weak. I absolutely can take care of her. I'm the youngest manager at my company, and I'm guaranteed a CEO position as soon as my boss retires. I don't care how much money you make. Alyssa is always well taken care of financially because of me. When I die, I won't be able to protect her anymore. She'll always have access to money, but not protection. You need to get your ducks in a row, son. I will never allow my daughter to be with someone like you. It would always bug me that Alyssa would be there for most of these fights. I thought that after all we had been through together, she would at least defend me. All she would do is shrug apologetically or avoid my eyes. It was almost as if she agreed with him. Why don't you ever defend me to him?
I agree with some of the things he has to say. I don't agree with how he says it, but I would feel safer if you were, Bigger. If there was someone that I knew who was bigger and made as much money as you, I'd be with them. I've just known you the longest, so it's easiest for me right now.
You would leave me for someone who was bigger than me? Do you not love me?
Oh, don't be hysterical, Ryan. Of course I do. I'm joking, obviously. It's not a big deal. Stop overreacting. If you were a real man, this wouldn't be an issue in the first place.
That was when I understood that if it ever came for her to choose between me and her father, she would always pick him over me. It broke my heart, but I tried not to think about it. I proposed to her anyways, and she accepted. On the day of the wedding, all of our families were there. I was filled with so much joy. I saw a lot of my family members that I hadn't seen in years. They were all congratulating me on how lucky I was to be marrying Alyssa. The ceremony was beautiful. I will never forget how breathtaking she looked in her white dress as she walked down the aisle. Tears welled in my eyes as I saw her. I tried my best to ignore the daggers George was staring at me from the left side of the room. His face was blood red, and his knuckles were white from grabbing the seat in front of him so tightly. Even though there was music playing, I could still hear him grumbling angrily to himself. I did my best to put him out of my mind. We said our vows to each other, kissed, and were married. Everyone except George cheered. At the reception was where everything went south. As I was sitting next to Alyssa, I noticed George standing by the punch bowl rather suspiciously. He was hovering around it nervously and looking around to see if anyone was watching him. He saw that I was watching and smiled at me. I tapped Alyssa on the shoulder to point out how suspicious her father was being, but she ignored me. She was too busy chatting away with her maid of honor. I watched him closely. He gave me a wink before tapping a brown powder into the drink and quickly stirred it with a ladle. He wiped the remaining residue on his pants before walking away. Surely he didn't poison the punch, right? Alyssa, your psychotic father just put something in the fruit punch bowl.
What? No, he didn't. He would never do that. You can't just make up lies about my father. He's your father too now. Get over yourself.
I didn't say anything more about it. As she got back to her conversation with her family, I quietly texted all of my family members present not to drink from the punch bowl. Very shortly after we had finished eating, people began to make toasts to us. It was then that whatever George put into the punch bowl kicked in. Almost at the exact same time, entire tables of people were vomiting all over the place. The room quickly became full of the smell of hot vomit. Because I had sent out that text message of warning to my family, it was only Alyssa's that was vomiting. Her family came up with the idea that it was me who had poisoned the punch. Alyssa became so angry with me and wouldn't listen to anything that I had to say. I tried to convince her that it was her father. "I saw him do it, Alyssa!" I yelled. Alyssa's distant relatives rose from their seats with George leading them against me.
You can't marry someone who poisons your family and then blames it on your father.
I knew you weren't good enough to be with me. What kind of person does this?
I told you he was up to no good, Pumpkin. Under the pressure from all of her family, Alyssa took me to court the next day and divorced me. I was married for a total of 12 hours, and I was absolutely devastated. Her father came by the house to take all of her things. He was gleeful as he packed all her things away, getting rid of the life the two of us had together for the past 9 years. I couldn't believe how little she trusted me after everything we had gone through together. When he was done packing everything, he turned to me with that smile of his that I had come to hate so deeply and said to me, "I told you I'd never allow it." I was miserable for a very long time after that. She had been in my life for so long, and it was hard to adjust to the hole she had left in my life without her. Luckily, I had my brother by my side. He never liked Alyssa and was glad that we didn't work out. "You deserve so much better than her," he told me. Against my wishes, he would set me up on blind dates to get over her as quickly as possible. Soon, I met a girl who was Alyssa's complete opposite. She was kind to me, loved how I looked, and best of all, her father adored me. It wasn't long until the two of us got married and had 2 beautiful baby boys. My wife decided to name one after me and one after her father. A couple of years went by, and my boss finally retired. I was made CEO of the company, and I moved our little family to a nice quiet beach town on the East Coast. I would have never thought I would ever be this happy or this wealthy. One day, I was going to the local coffee shop to get my morning coffee. I had the boys with me in the stroller. Before I walked in the building, I saw a homeless woman sitting outside on the ground. She was in ragged clothing and held a tin cup in her hands. Her hair was in shambles and looked like a rat's nest. I became slightly protective of my children and tried to hurry in the shop.
Ryan?
Alyssa!
I'm so glad I found you. I heard through the grapevine that you had moved over here, so I came over here to beg for you to come back. I know what my father did at the wedding.
She explained to me that years after the wedding fiasco, George got drunk at a family reunion and confessed that he was the one who had poisoned the punch. After this drunken outburst, the entire family turned against him and his daughter, refusing to speak to either of them. One of George's brothers actually was so upset that he pressed charges against him. George was originally sentenced to 4 years, but got into a prison fight within the first week. He was stabbed by another inmate, and he fought back in retaliation. He's now facing life in prison. As for Elisa, she went on to marry someone that her father set her up with. The person that her father chose was also mentally unstable and would beat her. She managed to get a divorce, but he somehow won. She was responsible for paying him alimony. Everyone heard about how she had pinned the wedding poisoning on me, and no one wanted anything to do with her anymore. She couldn't find work or another husband. She was forced to sell her house and declare bankruptcy. She had been homeless for years. After she explained her story to me, she looked at my children in the stroller and smiled sadly.
If you think about it, it kind of is your fault. All you had to do was listen to my father and just better yourself so that you could provide for me like a real man would have. That's all you needed to do. You drove me to my father, and he turned out to be insane. You were the one who abandoned me, Ryan.
I gave you everything you needed. I provided you with food, put a roof over your head, and wasted the best years of my life on you. I'm happily married to a wife who loves me and have 2 beautiful children. The fact that you followed me across the country here speaks of how insane you are. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The only time I saw Alyssa after that was on the news. She died from an overdose in the streets a couple of weeks later. News of her passing reached her father in prison, and he was so depressed that no one will be visiting him behind bars. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. That is, until I had had enough. Both Toby and my mother showed up late one night and began pounding on my door and screaming that I was an ungrateful and useless son, and started destroying things outside my house. I had been expecting them to show up and had bought a taser gun. As quickly as I could, I opened the front door to my house. When they saw me with a gun, they started running. But I chased after them and tased them both. By the time they were recovering, the police had shown up, and they were finally able to arrest them. Hey there, my name is Kai, and I have a very unique situation. You see, when I was very young, my mother Tanya wasn't very responsible, and as a result, my sister Tasha and I ended up going and living with our grandmother Kathy. From time to time, our mother would come and visit, but the purposes for her visits were always for some ulterior motive. Usually it was because she needed money, but she always tried to pretend she was doing it because she missed us, which of course she didn't.
Hey guys, it's great to see you. Hey Tanya, to what do we owe the pleasure of your company? It's been a while and I wanted to see you guys.
Mama!
Hey kids! Tanya, what is the real reason that you are here? Well, yes, if you can spare some cash. I'm a little low.
My grandmother rolled her eyes, but eventually did give my mother some money. Quite literally, shortly after she was given money, my mother left. Sadly, it was always like that. She would come and ask our grandmother for money, and then leave shortly thereafter. It always felt bad to know that our mother never came to visit for us. She was only ever interested in getting money from our grandmother, and then moved on. As we grew up, the visits were far more focused on just getting money, and our mother became more honest about what she was visiting us for. Even the few times that we've seen her on holidays, it was all the same thing. Hey Mama, Merry Christmas!
Yeah, whatever. Hey Mom, I need money. More? You came last month and asked for money. What do you need it for? Mind your own business. Just give me the money.
Eventually, I stopped wishing that my mother would come and visit. I realized that she clearly didn't care about my sister and I, but only ever wanted money. As I grew up, I came to realize that my mother had drug problems and that she needed the money to pay for her habit. Knowing that did humanize her, but that didn't really make it any better. When I was 15, we had a huge scare. The police called my grandmother and told her that they had found my mother passed out in the streets. She had overdosed and nearly died on the street. For a few weeks afterwards, she was in and out of the hospital.
Hey, listen to me. I need money. Tanya, what makes you think that we would give you money? You need help, not money so that you can get more drugs. You bitch, just give me what I want.
We were forced to call the police on her, and after a struggle in which our mother broke an officer's nose. The cops then used their batons to knock her unconscious. It was incredibly embarrassing. After that, we didn't hear from our mother for many years. During those years, Tasha and I grew up and went off to school. Our grandmother helped us pay for school to make our lives much easier. Both of us passed our courses with flying colors and even managed to find very good jobs. Once we were doing well for ourselves, we moved out, but we would visit our grandmother often. One day, though, we went home and found our grandmother had passed away. She had had a heart attack in the middle of the night and passed away. We were heartbroken, but we had always known that this would happen one day. Luckily, she had told us what she had wanted, and so we were able to make preparations for her service very easily. Her funeral was beautiful, and many people came to mourn her passing. A few days after the funeral, our grandmother's lawyer contacted my sister and I and asked us to come to his office to hear the reading of the will. Honestly, we had always known that our grandmother had some money, but we never imagined that she would be loaded. Apparently, our grandfather had owned several businesses when he was younger and had sold them and put all that money into investments that he and our grandmother lived off of until they had both passed away. At any rate, now that she had passed, our grandmother had her lawyer divide them up equally and give half to each of us, along with a couple of properties. Both Tasha and I were blown away. We weren't exactly poor, but this inheritance easily made our lives 1,000 times easier. I was given the house that we grew up in, and with some of the inheritance that I had been given, I began to renovate it a bit so that it was more in line with my style. I had contractors and workers coming in and out the house. So many, in fact, that I hadn't learned most of their names until one day I noticed one guy that was working on the bathroom, and he was installing the wrong kind of tile and had painted the walls the wrong color. I was annoyed, of course, but I had just assumed that it was miscommunication, and so I spoke with him to find out where the error had occurred. Hi there. So listen, you're doing great work, but this bathroom is all wrong. The walls are meant to be a much lighter color, and the tiles are also meant to be a light gray and not black like you've installed. I'm sorry, but I'm just doing what the owner told me to do. That's not possible, as I'm the owner, and this isn't what I asked for. Can you show me who told you to do it this way? The man was very confused, but he led me downstairs to the kitchen, where an older man was speaking loudly into his cell phone. The worker pointed at the man and indicated that he was the owner, to which I thanked him and instructed him the proper way that the bathroom was to be redone before finding out who this stranger was. As I walked up to him, the odd man looked at me with contempt and sneered. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing speaking to the workers? If you don't leave right now, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." "And how can I be trespassing on my own property? Who the hell are you, and what gives you the right to tell my workers what to do?" Just then, my mother walked into the kitchen. She looked very worn out and quite a bit heavier than the last time that I had seen her. I knew that this was going to be something very annoying.
Oh, it's you. What are you doing here?
"Hello, Mother. I'm here because I inherited the house. Why are you here, and who is this guy?"
This is my fiancé, Toby, and there is no way that this is your house. My mother passed away, and as her only child, that means that everything that was hers is now mine.
That's not how things work, Mom. Grandma left this house to me in her will. She didn't leave anything to you because she knew that you would just squander it and sell it for drugs.
How dare you speak to me that way? This is my house, whether you like it or not.
I wasn't listening to her anymore, and so I took out my phone and called the police. As soon as Toby realized what I was doing, he tried to wrestle the phone away from me. He tried to slap me, and when I kept dodging him, he then tried to kick and punch me. I can only imagine how the conversation sounded on the other end of the telephone. But thankfully, they sent out a squad car that pulled up to the house. Toby and my mother began to look panicked when the police showed up. They looked like they were about to run when the officers pulled them aside and began questioning them. 2 other officers pulled up and began speaking with me, and after I showed them the copy of the will that I had been given, they then began trying to talk to my mother and Toby and get them to leave. This made both of them extremely angry, and both of them began to scream and shout at me at the officers, and Toby even took a swing at the one closest to him. The officer was struck on the chin and fell down, but immediately got back up, and along with the other officers, they threw my mother and Toby into the back of their squad car and drove off. I thought that that was the end of it, but the next day, both of them were back and they were harassing the workers, and when they saw me, Toby charged at me and tried to punch me, but I managed to dodge his blow and shoved him so hard that he fell on his ass. I then called the police and had them taken away again, but this time, I made sure that the police took my full report on what had happened, and I filed for a restraining order against them. I wasn't going to take any chances with them. I knew what my mother was capable of. The next day, I got a call from Tasha saying that our mother and Toby were doing the same thing to her at her place. I didn't understand how they managed to be out police custody twice. Our mother was screaming that the will that we both had been witnesses to was a fake, and that if we didn't give her what she felt she was owed, that she would sue us into oblivion, and that she would leave us broke and penniless. Both Tasha and I knew that she was full of crap, and that if she dared to challenge the will that she would lose, and so we went to our grandmother's lawyer and asked them to represent us. Weeks later, we were dragged into court, but it didn't take long for the judge to see that the will was legitimate and that our mother was merely crazy, and had just assumed that, as her mother only had the one child, that she just automatically inherited everything. The judge tried to explain that that simply was not the case, but our mother began to have a full-blown tantrum and screeched in court that the judge didn't know what he was talking about. After a couple minutes, the judge had the guards put our mother and Toby in jail for being in contempt of the court. They fought like hell, but the officers overpowered them. She was jailed for 1 week. Once she got out, my mother began to call my sister and I, threatening us and constantly trying to get us to give in and give something. At first, she wanted our entire inheritance, but the longer we denied her, she slowly began to pivot and just ask for some money instead. Both Tasha and I had agreed that she didn't deserve anything and stonewalled her. More than once, she and Toby would try to come to our homes and intimidate us, but they always left before the police would show up to enforce the restraining order. That is, until I had had enough. Both Toby and my mother showed up late one night and began pounding on my door and screaming that I was an ungrateful and useless son, and started destroying things outside my house. I had been expecting them to show up and had bought a taser gun. As quickly as I could, I opened the front door to my house. When they saw me with a gun, they started running. But I chased after them and tased them both. By the time they were recovering, the police had shown up, and they were finally able to arrest them. Because of their repeated harassment of us, the court decided to sentence them to a year in prison. Few months into their prison sentence, I heard rumors of how my grandmother's ghost will torment my mother in prison. People also told me that when they were finally released, that they had been forced to live on the street. Since they didn't pay their rent because they were in prison, their landlord had sold all their belongings and had evicted them. I have no doubt that the two of them ended up breaking up as well. Although what became of them after that, I have no idea. As for my sister and I, we are just enjoying our lives, and I'm happy to say that my sister is currently engaged, and I have no doubt that I'll be an uncle within a year or so. Thank God we had such an amazing grandmother who was there to support us, and that we weren't reliant on our mother. Thanks for watching. And make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.